Output of this one is a DNO whose the employee is more than 5, like the DNO 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 is the stored at the memory. In the memory, so 1, 2, 3 will be saved as a name big DEPT. Then you can access this data at just like the table. So for example here, the big DEPT will be used just like the table. So this is the with, or sometimes it's called the inline view, temporary table inside the query. After the query, this will be gone. You cannot reuse. If you want to reuse this one, big DEPT, you need to create the view later. View is do you remember this architecture? It's called three schema architecture. Conceptual view, internal view. This is called external view. How do you implement the external view? View. You have one table but different view. So at the time you can create a view. So if you want to keep this one, big DPT, so you can create a view for this curve. Case is also interesting. One of the problem when I used the SQL first time 20 years ago, and the SQL 2, 3, the old standard, the SQL is not procedural language. What is a procedural language? What is non-procedural language? It has a start and end. And there are a lot of if-then-else logic. And so usually you need to compile using compiler, right? On the other hand, non-procedural language is kind of shell programming. It's an interpreter. Command by command, you can compile. So one of the problem of the SQL is it's a command line. So one statement by one statement. Not much procedural part. There's no if-then-else. So what if I'd like to update the employee? When the department number 5 add 2,000 extra. In case the 4, so if you implement without this one, you need to implement 3 updates for department number 5, department number 4, and department number 1. 3. Why 3 different queries? But why not combine? At that time you can use case. Case is it's kind of tricky way, alternative way to improve the programming, the interface. In Oracle it's called the decode. If you are familiar with Oracle, it's called the decode. Same thing. In case something, do something. Like this one, but it's a case when it's the standard, so you can use this. A very simple procedural part of the SQL. Recursive query is think about the supervisor. Who is the top of employee organization? CEO. Under CEO, executive member. Under the executive member, the manager. Under the manager, junior manager. And under the junior manager, employee. It's kind of hierarchy. So I'd like to access the supervisor and supervisee. So do I need to, from the CEO, you need to access this one, then find supervisor. And another SQL for each supervisee, find another supervisor and another level. But it's the same query, but starting is a condition is different. To address that one, recursive query actually shows such a hierarchical structure. It's not used a lot, but sometimes for specific case it's used. It's a new standard, recursive query. By sum up all of this, we can summarize the SQL. Select from is required, and where group by having order by is the condition. Okay, the next one is the assertion or trigger. Do you remember the constraint? What is a constraint? It's a rule. So when we talk about the relational database model, we discuss about what kind of a rule. Primary key rule, entity relationship rule, foreign key rule, and so on, so on, so on. Then one of them was user-specific, data-specific condition. Like when you update the salary should not be higher than the manager. For example, that is your company policy. It's not general policy of the SQL. But that's the policy, that's the constraint. How can we implement such a thing? One way, your application program. Whenever there is update, you can check whether higher than the manager or not. Is that T is the job. So you need to maintain the such a query every time. So to address that, to support the user-specific the constraint, there is the assertion. Well, it's the same thing, trigger. Idea is, have you ever heard about the ECA rule? Event, condition, and action. For example, you use error handling. When you have catch, okay, try and catch and throw, do something. Event, condition, and action. It's a used a lot, ECA. Same thing in the to keep the user-specific constraint. If there is an event, for example, update on salary, check the condition whether new salary is bigger than the manager's salary. If yes, do something, report. Or allow or decline, do something. So you can create the trigger. That trigger is, when you create the trigger, what happened in the database is, it's a service program, kind of. So keep running. While the database running, keep checking whenever this event happens. So it's like the service program. It's like the daemon process. Okay? Then always watch whether the employee's salary column is updated. So this is the trigger. So trigger and the assertion has the check. So event and check the condition and do action. So event, condition, action. So nowadays mostly trigger, not assertion. They are the same, but the trigger used a lot. So in case of trigger, so before insert or update, you can intuitively understand what does it mean. Event is the before salary and the supervisor of the employee is insert or update. For each row, check the condition. New salary is bigger than supervisor salary or not. Then inform supervisor. Inform supervisor actually is the procedure that we are going to discuss later in the PLC course. So view, as I introduced, is the not real table. It's just a structure only. It's a virtual table. So whenever we access workzone, it will really access the employee project workzone and run the disk query and return. It looks like the table, but it's not real table. Benefit? Instead of the disk query, you can just use access workzone. Simpler. You can standardize the project. Very simple. And also another benefit, security. For example, in the employee, there are a lot of important information like the social security number and how many, what is the income and so on. You don't want to release such information. But you need to give the permission if you need to access the first name, last name, and the P number hours. So instead, you can create the workzone and give the permission onto the only workzone. The user who access the workzone, they do not know what's behind. So it's a security purpose also. And also simplify and standardize. These are the benefit. Problem. For example, this one. User does not know whether it runs a group by. Group by means you need to sort the data. Let's say this one takes 1 minute. Then everyone try to access the DPT on the info. This is a simple table. Then everybody access. Then whenever this table is accessed, this query will be running. Takes a long time. Okay, it's the overhead of the system. You should be careful to use the view. Nowadays, we are using materialized view. Materialized view is the view, but mostly general view does not have the data, real data. Instead, it's just an outline, structure only. But materialized view actually keep the data. So for example, LA, I have two offices, LA and New York. New York has the database, okay, for employee. But if you access the data from around California, you need to go to the New York and go back. It takes a network latency. So to speed up, you can have the copy of the disk. It's not the major table, it's just copy, synchronized. Okay? Then access this table, this view, this is called the materialized. Okay. This is a materialization. Drop alter and the column. Okay, so that's the end of advanced database. Then the next one is programming. Oh, we did this one. Okay. So what is this? This is a computer. Inside the computer we have database. This is our MySQL database that has the employee. Okay? Then, the main purpose of the building such a design and implementing database is we'd like to access the data. So if we go back to the very beginning of this semester, we talk about the why we need a database. Is it possible to have the programming or application without database? Yes. Have you ever used the database in the programming class? First time, if you, like for example, Hello World, do you need a database for Hello World? No. That doesn't mean we do not use the data. We have data. Hello World itself is the data. Then mostly we use memory-based data. Okay? That's sometimes enough, but when we have very large data, it's not big enough. So because of that, we need a database separate their data structure to manage the very large data. So just like what you are using the Hello World, we'd like to use the employee, leave and salary and so on, okay, in our application program. Unfortunately, there is only one way to access this data. What? SQL, structured query language. This is also a language, it's a structured non-procedural language. Especially, it's specialized for the database query. But in our program, like for example, what kind of program are you using? Java, for example. We have the Java code. Then, if we are using Hello World, print out hello, we don't have to use the database. But in case we need to use the leave and salary, how can you? The only way is to go through the SQL. So, SQL should be part of the program language. At this time, this program is called the host program language. This one is called database program language. So, by combining this is called database program. So database programming is combine both host program language and SQL, database program language. Okay? There's no other way. That's the reason usually database the programming is not that simple. You need to combine two of them. The problem is, are they very friendly or not? Unfortunately, they are not very friendly. It looks like the oil and water. They never be mixed together. It's totally different in terms of what? Data structure. This one is, SQL is based on what? Relation. Relation consider data as a group. For example, Java consider data as what? Object. So their basic concepts are totally different. They cannot be mixed. So always you need to use both languages. One, program language, host language, another one, SQL, and combine. So that is the database programming. Okay, then mostly host language is in charge of what? Application part and graphical user interface. And any logic, business logic, will be implemented here. This part, SQL part, access the data, manipulate the data, change the data, such a data part. So you need to combine. Problem, how to combine? That is the different, depending on the programming. Okay? So one of the way is like whenever we need access the data, we can plug in SQL part and the part of the host program. Plug in. So this is called embedded approach. We can embed the SQL into host program language. For example, C language used a lot. Problem. So like the select the name, salary from employee. Then use this information in the logic, like the graphical user interface. Problem? If you compile this with the GCC, what happens? It's an error. GCC does not recognize this part, select from where, right? It will be error. So, embedded approach. Whenever you are using embedded approach, you need to pre-compile. Pre-compile means first this part compile into host language, C part. Then followed by pre-compile, followed by host language compile. Host language compile. Two-step compilation. Then problem is, who provide we know the host program language compiler like the GCC, GCC Plus, and so on. But who provide the pre-compiler? You. DBMS vendor provide. For example, Oracle provide, for example, ProC, ProCobol, like this one, or ProC++, which means this part will be compiled by, in case of C, ProC, in case of COBOL, ProCobol. As you can see, it's a mostly old-fashioned, low-level program language uses such an embedded approach. So, does it work on the Informix or the MySQL? No, it's not standardized. So you need to check with your DBMS vendor. Do you have the pre-compiler of the C language? Then they will provide the ProC. And do you have I'm using the Fortran. Do you have the pre-compiler for Fortran? Then they provide. You need to contact the database vendor. If you contact the operating system or the C compiler, no, they do not know. So this is an embedded approach. Second, another approach is the what if we make this part? We need to connect the database and access the SQL and then disconnect. This is a typical the step. Connect the database and run the SQL and disconnect. Can we make the kind of library for this? Because database connection and access the data and disconnect is kind of the general rule. It's already defined. So we can make the library to connect, to execute the SQL, to close the connection. Then this is called the library, the approach, such as JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. From the Java, there is a library, JDBC.jar file. So somebody already implement to connect the database and execute the SQL and the disconnect. What you need to is provide the SQL that you want to run. Okay? Output is already standardized, for example, using the result set Java, the library. Okay? So this JDBC is one of the examples. So then this time, one of the motto of Java is compile once, run everywhere, which means it's standardized. So no matter what the DBMS you use, you can use the JDBC. Okay. So this is nowadays is used a lot. The third one is, I forgot the third one, is component based. Let me check. Embedded SQL. It's not full solution. DB side solution, which means SQL is not enough to do the additional, like the condition or the complicated operation. Why don't we plus SQL plus procedural part, like the programming in the database server side. This is called the stored process, database stored procedure. Okay. For example, Oracle PL SQL. The Infomix PSN, procedural stored manager, something like that, the PSN. And each DBMS provides such a stored procedure. It's a database side, but it's not perfect. For example, no graphical user interface. Always is running on server side, database side. Okay, so these are the major approach for the database programming. You are using mostly nowadays the library. So for example, I'm using the Python. Python has a package to connect the database and execute your query and return. And if you are using JavaScript, JavaScript has such approach and so on. So you can check for each language how to connect the MySQL database and so on. If you are using this one, it's a little bit more complicated. However, still a lot of the companies still use the embedded approach. So they are using the embedded approach. And I forgot one more thing here. I said the host language and the database language SQL, they are totally different. This situation is called the impedance mismatch. So we will see in the somewhere here. Yeah. This is called the impedance mismatch. So because of that, we need to always combine the SQL with the host language. So First, when you start the database programming, so our database is already fixed, MySQL relational database. Then you need to decide your program language. Once you decide the program language, check the program language site. What is the library? Whether they provide the library or package or method to connect and to use the SQL. If they provide, you can import or you can use such a library. Then the test, the very basic connection like the select first name from employee and display. If you are using the web application, web server, you need to go through the in between. This is application, then there's an application server, web server, like the IIS, Apache server, and the many other. You can select such a thing and use through this application server, then connect the database. How can you test? Using browser at the time. I know that many of the students use select such a web application server. You need to test through the web browser for your program. If you are using PHP, it's the same thing. If you are using the Perl, it's the same thing. And the JavaScript, same thing. And however, if you are using the standalone Java application, which means you don't use the application server, web server, it's fine. You can directly connect the database MySQL and return the data. So that is the database programming. So for the remaining time, how long? We had 10 minutes. So instead of using this slide, I have the better one. I will show you some of the example of such a database programming. So first, embedded SQL. So embedded SQL, we have the pre-processing, pre-process, and then the host language process. Always, for example, the embedded SQL, we need to differentiate which part is SQL, which is not, right? So to differentiate the SQL part, we always use EXEC SQL. So if you see in the programming, if you see the EXEC SQL, this is embedded programming. So this part will be pre-compiled during the pre-compilation. Sometimes if you have the block, EXEC SQL block begin, EXEC SQL the end, which means that between them is considered as a part of embedded SQL part. So first, always start with the connect, do something, and the disconnect. So this is an example of the C using the Oracle. So you can see first you need to include the header file, so SQL the ca.h. Then this part is the SQL part. You can see the variable character, user ID. Variable character, this one, integer value. Then this declare section part. Have you ever used the old style program language like the COBOL or the Fortran? They usually have the declare section. What kind of variable? Because a long time ago most of computer do not have enough space on the memory. So you need to declare this variable, this one, then reserve that area. Then use that. Then we can save the memory space. Nowadays, we don't care. Whenever you need, you can define or instantiate and access the data because we pretty much enough flexibility to declare the variable, but it works not. So this kind of the programming is old-fashioned. So we define the memory space, user ID, and password. And also this variable will be used for both database and host program languages. So whenever you access the user ID and password from the database, will be stored at this variable. Then from host program language, you can access. It's kind of in between. So this will be the declare. Then this part is the host program language part. EXEC, this is the database embedded part. And connect the user using username and the password, you can connect. You can see to differentiate such a in-between variable from the host program, the variable, you can use a semicolon. This is colon, right? Colon. Colon user ID means this is used for in-between. It can be used for both database, the language, as well as the host language. So then the user ID identified password. You can create the table. This is a SQL that you want to run. And this is a SQL that you want to run. And this is a SQL. 3 SQL will be run. Then you store the data in the column value. We define the column value. Then you can access this value from the host language. This is a very simple, but it shows the something architecture of the embedded database program. Any embedded programming has the same mechanism. Okay. Then here the one more thing I'd like to introduce is cursor. Cursor is the kind of the space, room in the memory. Think about there's an impedance mismatch. Impedance mismatch means database programming, database the structure is different from the program language structure. In the database, we consider data as a group. But in the programming, we consider data as an object. Object by object by object. They are totally different. It looks like the similar, but because of a high abstraction of the program, we may not realize. But inside, they are totally different. To bridge the gap, it's a group of data, it's object by object. To bridge the data, whenever we access the data, select from where? Select first name from employee. Whole data will be returned. Then stored temporarily in the memory. It's like the room that mimic the database structure. So employee 1 here, employee 2 here, employee 3, employee 4. First data, second data, third data, fourth data. Then from host language side, outside, C program or Java program, they get the first row as an object, second row as an object, third row as an object from the memory. That area is called the cursor. So cursor is one of the important factor for tuning of your system. So we can define the room, temporary room. That room is called the S-info. It's how to organize. It's a database structure. Select from where? S-name. Then from your query, you can fetch one by one. After fetch, then you can use the num for in the host language, C programming. So it doesn't look like the convenient. Yes, it is true. It's not convenient. Because of that, nowadays, the library component-based approach is used a lot. So this is another example of the embedded SQL with the cursor. Then when you compile, one more important thing is when you compile, two-step compile. Pre-compile and the host language compile. Okay, you can see for example, this is an example of Oracle for PROC. So PROC is the pre-compiler provided by the Oracle. So you can compile the C programming, okay, at the PC. Usually to differentiate from the C programming, we use the .pc, PROC file. Then compile. Output is the test.c. It's a C language. Then finally we can use the GCC or CC compiler. Two-step compile. Mostly we set up the make. Quick question. What is the make? Have you ever used the make? Homework. Why don't you search the Google at home? This is a very important